The house was too quiet that night. The kind of silence that presses against your ears until you start to hear your own pulse. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have, like it was keeping score of every second I'd already lost. I remember sitting there staring at the glow of my phone on the table. It was ringing. Her name flashed across the screen, Lena, my daughter, my little girl who used to chase lightning bugs in the backyard. But I didn't answer. It wasn't anger. It wasn't neglect. It was exhaustion. One of those nights when work drained whatever part of you is still human. I saw her name, thought I'll call her back in a minute. That's all. 1 minute. But life doesn't wait politely for you to get your act together. When I finally checked, there was a voicemail. Just 16 seconds. Her voice, fragile, shaky, like someone standing too close to something they shouldn't. Dad, I think he's here again. I don't know what to do. Then a sound, maybe a door creaking, maybe a breath, and then silence. Not the kind that ends a call, the kind that ends a life. I still hear it sometimes when I close my eyes. That final breath caught between fear and faith. They said it was an accident. Wrong place, wrong time. But she'd called me. She knew something was wrong, and I ignored her. That's what I have to live with, not the loss, but the choice, the one I made without even realizing it. When the police came, they said all the things people are trained to say. We're sorry for your loss. It looks like she fell. No signs of foul play. But I saw her hands. There were marks. Bruises, faint but deliberate. Like someone had tried to hold her still. I asked questions. Too many, too late. They said I was grieving, imagining things. Maybe I was. But grief sharpens your vision in ways reason never could. I started to see him everywhere, in shadows, in reflections, in the smirk of strangers. Ethan, her mentor, her friend, the man I once trusted enough to invite into our home. That night, after everyone left, I sat at her desk. Her handwriting still covered the calendar. Little notes, hearts, reminders. Dinner with Ethan. My jaw locked. My chest felt tight. I found her notebook under the lamp filled with sketches and fragments, things she never told me. On the last page, one line stood alone. He said if I told you, he'd make me regret it. I read that sentence until it didn't feel real anymore, until it became something else, not grief, not sorrow. Something cleaner, sharper. I didn't cry that night. I didn't break anything. I just sat there listening to that voicemail again and again until her voice started to fade, like a punishment, slow and deliberate. Each replay softer, each word harder to hear. By morning, I'd stopped listening. But the silence she left behind, that never stopped. Pauses, breathes deeply. If I'd answered that call, would she still be alive? Would she still laugh the way she used to? Loud, unashamed, like the world didn't scare her yet? Would I still have someone who called me Dad without bitterness in her tone? It doesn't matter now. Because every second I didn't pick up that call, every second of silence and became a promise. A debt I owe her, one I plan to repay in full. He looks directly at the unseen listener, tone cold now. They said time heals everything. But time doesn't heal, it hides. And I've stopped hiding. Beat. Long quiet. The sound of the clock again. The phone still sits on the table where I left it that night. The voicemail is still saved. I press play sometimes, not to hear her voice, but to remind myself what failure sounds like. The first sound I didn't answer. The last sound I'll ever forget. Morning light doesn't forgive. It doesn't care about grief. It just pours in indifferent, spilling across the floor like nothing ever happened. That next day, the sun came up over a house that felt hollow. Not empty, but stripped. Every object carried her fingerprints, but no warmth. The mug she always used sat in the sink, still half full. Her jacket, the yellow one she loved, hung crooked by the door. I moved like a ghost, touching things I shouldn't. Her books, her sketch pad, her hairbrush still tangled with strands of her hair. Each item felt sacred, like evidence of something I'd already destroyed. I didn't eat, didn't shave, didn't speak. The world outside kept spinning, but mine had turned into a single frozen frame. Her name on my phone. 16 seconds of sound. People came by, like they always do after tragedy. Neighbors with casseroles, friends with pity, the kind of kindness that suffocates. I nodded, said thank you, and meant none of it. They left flowers. She hated flowers, said they reminded her of funerals. Maybe she knew. The police report came next. Accidental fall. That's what they wrote. But the bruises didn't match the story. Neither did the fear in her voice. I replayed that voicemail again, this time through headphones. You start to hear new things when you listen closely enough. A faint hum, maybe an engine. A man's voice, low and muffled, saying something I still can't make out. Every time I played it, I wrote down what I thought I heard. Don't. Stay. Quiet. Fragments of truth scattered across seconds. That's when I found the photograph. It was tucked inside a book she'd been reading. The Great Gatsby of all things. A snapshot taken at some office event. My daughter smiling, nervous but happy, next to Ethan. His hand too close to her back. His eyes looking at her, not the camera. My stomach turned. That same smile I once thought was confidence. I could see it now for what it was. Control. I wanted to smash the frame. Burn it. But I didn't. I placed it on my desk right beside her voicemail transcription. A reminder. A focus point. Grief has to be channeled or it eats you alive. Days blurred. Nights stretched. I stopped answering calls altogether. People said I was isolating. Maybe I was. But isolation is clarity. It strips away the noise. The condolences, the distractions, the lies. That's when the dream started. I'd see her standing in the hallway barefoot, the phone in her hand. Her lips moving, but no sound. Always the same, her eyes wide, her mouth trembling. Then darkness. I'd wake up gasping, the voicemail still playing from the nightstand. 16 seconds looping endlessly. One night I heard something else in the recording. Just before it ends, a faint metallic click. Like a door lock. Like someone closing it behind them. That detail hit me harder than anything else. Because I'd taught her that. When she was little, I used to say, "Lock the door when you're scared." "I'll come." She'd locked it. I just never came. That realization didn't break me. It built me. The next morning, I printed out every message, every note, every scrap of her handwriting. I laid them across the table like pieces of a map. My hands didn't shake this time. I wasn't crying anymore. I was calm, a calm that felt foreign, unnatural. Because when you finally understand that someone took what you love most and when you know it, grief transforms into something else. Something colder. I stood there staring at her picture and whispered what I hadn't been able to say since the funeral. "I'm sorry, baby." Then quieter, sharper. "I'll fix this." He exhales slowly, looks off screen, eyes glassy but resolved. People think revenge is born in anger. It isn't. It's born in silence, in the spaces between the words you never said, the calls you never answered. And that silence has been echoing for far too long. He picks up the phone one last time, presses play and listens until the voicemail cuts off. "Dad." The voice fades. The silence returns. Only now I'm not afraid of it anymore. The voicemail became my ritual. Every night I'd play it before bed, the sound of her breath catching, her fear trying to stay hidden behind a trembling voice. I'd close my eyes and imagine answering it. Imagine saying, "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm coming." But I hadn't. That's the thing about memory. It doesn't forgive rewrites. It demands the truth even when you can't live with it. I started visiting her room at night, sitting on the edge of her bed. The sheets still smelled faintly of lavender and cheap vanilla lotion, the kind she bought with her first paycheck. Her shoes lined up neatly under the dresser, her favorite hoodie folded perfectly at the foot of the bed. She was tidy, disciplined, not careless, not the kind to fall by accident. The police never came back. Case closed. No foul play. Those words still feel like mockery. You can't close a case when the truth is still breathing somewhere out there. One night I sat at her desk scrolling through her old messages. That's when I saw it. A contact saved under Mr. S. A string of texts, deleted except for one. "You said you wouldn't tell him." I stared at it for a long time. The timestamp 8:13 p.m. Her voicemail came in at 8:17, 4 minutes before she died. That was the moment I stopped grieving and started remembering. Every warning she'd given me, every time she'd said, "He scares me, Dad," and I'd brushed it off as teenage exaggeration. I'd told her the world doesn't work like that people don't just hurt others and walk away. I was wrong. Guilt has a taste, metallic, bitter. It sits at the back of your tongue, won't wash away no matter what you drink. I tried whiskey. I tried prayer. Neither helped. So I started writing again. Not letters this time, but notes, connections, names, timelines. I mapped out her last day like a crime scene. Hour by hour, step by step, school, work, the bus route, the alley where they found her. A witness said she looked scared, running from someone. No one followed up. The deeper I looked, the colder I became. Because there's a certain point where grief burns itself out and what's left behind isn't healing, it's purpose. I remember the night I said it out loud. I was sitting alone in the kitchen, the clock ticking like it always did, mocking me with every second I'd wasted. Her photo on the table, candle flickering beside it. I looked at her smile, wide, brave, beautiful, and I whispered, "You tried to warn me." Then louder, steadier, "I hear you now." It felt like a promise. I printed the text from Mr. S and pinned it beside her photo. My list began again. Names, dates, connections. Ethan Shaw, the office. The call, the message. The sound of that lock clicking shut. Was I obsessed? Maybe. But obsession is just grief with direction. People like to think revenge makes you monstrous, that it steals your soul. But what if your soul was already taken? Ripped away the moment you lost what mattered most? What if all revenge does is give you back a shape, a spine, a reason to breathe again? I started keeping my phone on full volume after that. Every ring felt like a test, like maybe she'd call again, one last chance to answer. I'd pick it up even when it was spam, even when it was nothing but silence. And each time I'd whisper, "I'm here," because that's what I should have said the first time. On the last night before her birthday, I went to her grave. It was raining, soft, steady, like the world was trying to apologize. I knelt down, hands shaking, phone in my pocket, still playing that old voicemail. I spoke quietly, like she was beside me. "You were right, sweetheart. About him. About everything." The rain hit the ground in small explosions of mud and memory. "I didn't protect you then, but I will now." The thunder rolled. The phone buzzed once in my pocket, a spam call probably. Still, I smiled. Maybe it was her way of answering. When I stood to leave, I turned back one last time. Her name carved into stone, clean and perfect. The world had taken her voice, but not her echo. That still belonged to me. "I'll make it right," I said. "For both of us." The wind picked up, scattering the rain sideways, but I didn't flinch. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what to do. I missed my daughter's first steps, and her last goodbye. But I won't miss the next call. Grief doesn't fade. It sharpens. It turns from ache to edge, clean, cold, deliberate. I thought I was past the worst of it. But grief has a way of reinventing itself, finding new shapes to wear. This time it came wearing Ethan's face. It started on a Thursday, late afternoon, the kind of light that turns everything gold and dishonest. I was cleaning out her desk, the last thing I'd avoided doing. Every drawer was a quiet wound. Crumpled receipts, half-written letters, lipstick smudges on paper napkins. Then I found it, folded inside her old sketchbook, the one with the torn cover she used to carry everywhere. A photograph. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. My brain refused to connect the pieces. Her, smiling, alive, leaning into him. His arm wrapped around her like ownership. Ethan Shaw, my friend, my best friend. I remember the sound of the photo slipping from my hand. It hit the floor like a verdict. My pulse didn't race, it slowed. That's how you know something inside you has just shifted. Not panic, just an awful quiet stillness. I sat there staring at it for a long time until the light started to fade. The smile on his face looked forced, too wide, too proud. Hers. Hers was harder to read. There was a hesitation in it, a tension in the shoulders I hadn't noticed before. I ran my thumb across the crease in the photo. It had been folded right between them, and on the back, written in her neat, rounded handwriting, May 14th. He said it was just coffee. Just coffee. I laughed. The kind of laugh that doesn't sound human. Because I remember that day. Ethan had canceled on me last minute. Said he was tied up at work. So this is what he was doing. The air felt heavier, like the walls themselves knew and were waiting for me to catch up. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness anymore. Something sharper, cleaner. I started pacing the room. The photo on the desk. My phone in hand. Her voice in my head. "He scares me, Dad." Ethan had been around for years, barbecues, birthdays, Christmas mornings. He'd held my daughter when she was a baby, watched her grow up, smiled in every photo, told me once, "You're the brother I never had," and all this time, my heart clenched. Then very slowly, it let go. Grief became something else in that moment. Not fire. Fire burns too fast. This was ice, slow, controlled, permanent. That night I sat at the kitchen table with the photo in front of me. Every detail became evidence. The background, a cafe I recognized downtown near the river. The way the sun hit the glass mid-afternoon. The necklace she was wearing, a small silver heart I'd bought her for her 17th birthday. I zoomed in on everything like it was a crime scene. Maybe it wasn't madness, not yet. It was focus, precision. I opened her email, her text backups, her social media. The name Ethan appeared in subtle ways. An old comment, a tagged location, an archived chat. He wasn't just passing through her life. He was woven into it. Every discovery felt like digging her up again, inch by inch, breath by breath. When the clock struck midnight, I whispered to the photo, "Why him?" The question wasn't for her. It was for me. Because the answer was obvious. He'd been close enough. Trusted enough. Invisible enough. My hand tightened around the edge of the table. "You bastard," I breathed. "They say revenge starts with anger." That's not true. Anger fades. It burns out. No, revenge starts with logic. The slow realization that something must be done. Not for justice, not even for peace, but because not doing it would mean accepting the world as it is. I looked at Ethan's face again. The longer I stared, the less human it seemed. Just a collection of lines and shadows and lies. "People call it madness," I whispered. "I call it clarity." The clock ticked once. Then again. Each sound sharp, deliberate, like the universe agreeing. Tomorrow I would visit that cafe. See what the camera couldn't. Because grief may have broken me, but revenge would rebuild me. He pauses, eyes lingering on the photo, a trembling smile at the edge of his lips. "You said it was just coffee. Ethan, let's find out what else you lied about." The next morning I woke before the sun. No alarm, no dream. Just that hollow kind of awareness that drags you up from sleep like someone calling your name in the dark. The house felt colder, emptier. Her laughter used to fill this place. Now only the refrigerator hums like a machine breathing in her absence. The photo sat on the counter where I left it, face down. I didn't want to look at it again, but I did anyway. Because I needed to. Because pain, when it has purpose, feels different. It almost feels useful. I slipped it into my jacket pocket and drove. The city was still waking. Gray streets, fog sitting low, the first few cars cutting through silence. I passed the school she used to go to, the park where she learned to ride her bike. The light turned red, and for a moment I saw her there, small hands gripping the handlebars, hair flying, shouting, "I'm doing it, Dad." And then she was gone again, like she always is. I parked across from the cafe, same old brick walls, blue awning faded by the sun, a place you'd never notice unless you were looking for it. The morning crowd was already there, people with laptops, parents with strollers, the smell of espresso hanging thick in the air. I sat in my car, watching. The door opened and faces came and went, none of them his. But I wasn't looking for him now. I was looking for her ghost. I imagined her there in that same chair by the window, nervous, smiling too much, stirring her drink just to keep her hands busy, and him leaning forward saying something to make her laugh, that kind of easy charm he always used to hide behind. I could almost hear it. Almost see it. I got out of the car and walked in. The bell above the door chimed, too cheerful for a place that held my worst memories. The barista looked up, polite smile. I ordered coffee I didn't want and took the seat by the window. It was the same spot. I knew it. I could feel her there. The ghost of her warmth pressed into the cushion. On the wall, a small corkboard was covered in Polaroids. Customers smiling, dates written below. My eyes scanned through them until I froze. May 14th. There she was. Her and Ethan, the same day. The same goddamn photo, only this one wasn't folded. It was whole, someone had written in marker. Great coffee. Great company. My breath hitched. I reached out, fingers hovering just above the image. The barista looked over, curious. I smiled, pretended to read the board. But inside I was unraveling, so he brought her here publicly, proudly, like he had nothing to hide. That's when I noticed something else. In the reflection of the cafe window ran across the street, a small building with a sign, Shaw and Associates, Financial Advisory. His office. Of course. He'd opened it last year. Everything in me went still again. That cold clarity returned. The world narrows when you find your purpose. All the noise, the chaos, it fades. What's left is direction. Focus. I left the cafe, coffee untouched. Walked across the street, stood outside his glass door. His name in gold lettering, neat, proud. I could see the reception desk inside, the empty chair. No one there yet. I pressed my palm against the glass. It was cold. I trusted you, I whispered. The words fogged up the window, then disappeared. Like everything else. That night I printed out the photograph. 5 copies. 1 on my wall. 1 on the fridge. 1 folded in my wallet. 1 taped inside the cover of her notebook. 1 left on my bedside table where I could see it before sleep. Obsession? Maybe. But obsession is just grief that's learned how to think. I began to collect everything about him. His social media, his business listings, his friends, his wife, his favorite bars. He liked whiskey, golf, and pretending to be a good man, and me? I liked silence. And planning. Each night I poured a drink, sat under the dim lamp, and studied his life the way a surgeon studies anatomy. Clinically, precisely. I didn't need violence, not yet. What I needed was truth, because if he hurt her, if he touched her, then there would be no forgiveness. There would only be clarity. He pauses. Breathes out slowly, voice almost gentle now. I used to pray for peace, I say quietly. Now I pray for proof. It started with sleepless nights. The kind that drag you into strange hours. That blur between 2 and 4 a.m. when everything feels thinner, like reality itself could tear if you press too hard. I'd sit in the kitchen with the photograph spread out under the lamp, the edges already soft from my thumb tracing her face again and again. She looked happy. That's what broke me most. That smile, and the one I used to think was mine to protect. Now it was his. And every time I looked at it, I felt the same thing rise in me. Not rage, not grief, but something quieter. Sharper, like a needle under the skin. I started visiting the cafe more often. Not to see him, I told myself that at least. Just to understand. To see what she saw, feel what she felt in those final days. I'd watch the door. Listen to the way people spoke to each other. Try to imagine how he made her laugh, how she looked at him when she thought no one was watching. Sometimes I'd talk to the barista, a young woman named Claire. She mentioned them once offhand without realizing. She used to come here with this guy, she said. He always paid. Called her kiddo. I thought it was sweet. Sweet. That word echoed like a curse. I smiled at her, pretending it didn't gut me. Then I went home and opened my laptop. I found Ethan's profile in minutes. His photos, his business website, his vacation posts. A life curated to look spotless. Golf courses, charity dinners, his wife beside him, the perfect smile of a man with nothing to hide. But I knew better. People don't show the cracks. They just paint over them. Scrolling deeper, I found an old post. A birthday photo, the same week as the one in my daughter's notebook. The caption read, "Family means everything." Family. He used that word like a shield. I clicked through the comments. My daughter's name wasn't there, but there were traces and likes. A shared location tag, a timestamp that matched one of her text messages. The same night she called me, the night I didn't answer. My chest tightened. She'd been with him. That night. And I didn't pick up. I shut the laptop, hands shaking. The room felt smaller, heavier. Like the air itself was accusing me. What kind of father misses that? What kind of man ignores his own daughter's fear? He exhales a shaky breath that almost turns into a laugh. I thought I was protecting her, I whisper. By keeping out of her choices. By pretending she was strong enough to handle him. But she wasn't, and neither was I. I opened the photo again. This time, I noticed something I hadn't before. In the reflection of a glass door behind them. A logo, faint, reversed, but legible. The pier at restaurant and bar, I knew the place. Waterfront, dim lighting, expensive meals. The kind of place men like him took their mistakes to make them feel special. I went there the next day. Same corner table by the window. Same soft jazz playing over the speakers. The waitress greeted me like any other customer, No idea she was stepping into a ghost story. I ordered her favorite dessert, chocolate mousse. I didn't touch it, just watched it melt, slow and sad. Then I asked the waitress a question I already knew the answer to. Do you remember a man, early 40s, brown hair, always wore cufflinks, used to come here with a younger woman? She frowned, thinking, maybe we get a lot of those. Then she paused. Wait, yeah, he tipped big, real big. She had these bracelets that jingled when she laughed. Cute kid. Cute kid. The words felt like salt in a wound. I thanked her, paid the bill, and left. But I didn't drive home. I sat in the parking lot staring at the reflection of the restaurant lights in the water. The city skyline behind them, distant and cold. That's when it hit me. The truth I'd been circling for days. This wasn't about a friendship gone wrong. Or a daughter led astray. This was about ownership. About power. About a man who thought he could take what wasn't his and walk away untouched. The storm in my chest went quiet then. Not gone, just focused. I knew what I had to do next. Find him. Look him in the eye. Make him see what he took from me. And when I do, when he finally recognizes the cost of his choices, I won't need to raise my voice, I'll just show him the photograph and let silence finish the rest. People call it madness, I say. But no, it's clarity. He didn't recognize my voice at first. Maybe it was because I hadn't spoken to him since the funeral. Or maybe it was because grief changes tone, strips warmth, leaves only echo. When I finally called, I made sure to sound steady, polite, almost friendly. Ethan, I said, it's been a while. I was thinking. We should catch up. Dinner? A pause. A short breath through the receiver. That sound, hesitation, it told me everything. Guilt speaks before words do. He agreed, of course. Guilt always does. That night I set the table with precision, every motion deliberate. The white tablecloth ironed. Her favorite red wine, opened an hour early, just enough to breathe. 2 plates, one of them chipped on the rim. The same one she used to use when she'd sneak food into her room laughing. I didn't wash it after she died. Couldn't. It still carried the faint scent of her perfume, lavender and sugar. I told myself it wasn't obsession. It was ritual, memory disguised as order. When he arrived, he wore the same cologne he'd worn in the photograph. Sharp, masculine, expensive, the kind that lingers too long in the air. He smiled, that careful, practiced smile that men like him use when they want to look sincere. Good to see you, man, he said, extending a hand. I looked at it for a moment before shaking it. His palm was cold, sweaty even. Fear trying to hide behind charm, we sat. I poured the wine. He thanked me twice, once too many. The silence between us stretched, heavy and humming. The clock ticked behind him, each second louder than the last. How have you been holding up? He asked finally. I almost laughed. How have I been holding up? As if I hadn't buried my only child 3 months ago. As if I didn't replay her final voicemail every night until sleep blurred it into guilt. But I smiled. I manage, and I said. He nodded, eyes darting to the photo on the shelf, her photo. The same one that used to sit on my desk at work. Her hair in loose curls, her eyes bright, her smile unguarded. I watched him looking at it, watched the flicker of recognition in his eyes, and that was when I knew. He thought he'd buried it. The truth, the memory, her, but I hadn't. I served dinner. Pasta, her favorite. The one she used to ask for every Sunday night. He didn't touch it at first. Just kept glancing between me and the plate. You still cook, he said, forcing a chuckle. Habit, I replied. Some things stick. We talked, or pretended to. About work, about the weather, about meaningless things that filled the air so the truth wouldn't. Every time he mentioned his wife, his tone shifted, softer, almost rehearsed. I could tell he was waiting for me to slip, to accuse, to say her name, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I let him talk. About his promotion, his new house, his life moving on. Each word he spoke felt like a hammer against my chest, but I stayed still. I even laughed once. A real laugh, maybe. Or maybe it was something else, and the sound of something breaking quietly. The wine helped. Not the taste, and that was bitter, but the ritual of it. The way the glass trembled slightly in my hand when I lifted it. He noticed, I think. His eyes flickered toward the movement, then away again. Too fast. And then, when the silence had grown so thick it felt alive, I raised my glass. To her. I said softly. To truth? To love that survives its own destruction. He froze halfway through a breath. What? He asked, voice thin. I smiled. To her, I repeated. We clinked glasses. The sound was small and almost delicate, like a final note in a song he drank. I didn't. The clock ticked again. The same rhythm it had kept the night she called. And in that moment I understood something I hadn't before. Revenge doesn't come in fire or fury. It comes in patience, in silence, in the weight of knowing more than the other person thinks you do. He was sweating now, his smile fading, his eyes restless. He knew I knew, and I let him sit there squirming in that knowledge, because I didn't need to hurt him. I just needed him to feel her absence. I began, That's the thing about guilt, I whisper. It eats from the inside out. You don't need to feed it. You just have to watch. The night deepened, slow and deliberate. Shadows stretched across the room like spectators, leaning in, waiting for something to break. The candlelight flickered between us, catching on the edges of his face. Too polished, too careful. Ethan Shaw, my daughter's secret. My friend's betrayal. He was talking again, something about a new project at work. I wasn't listening. I was watching the way his hand circled the stem of the glass. How his thumb tapped once, twice, pause, just like hers used to when she was nervous. My chest tightened. That small, stupid habit. He'd stolen even that from her. I wonder if he noticed the music I chose, the same jazz record she loved, the one that used to fill the house on Sunday mornings while she danced barefoot in the kitchen. I'd found the record still in the player, a thin layer of dust dulling its surface. Now the music sounded wrong, slower, off-key. Maybe because she wasn't here. Maybe because he was, so, You've been holding up, okay? He asked again, his tone soft, too soft. I nodded. As well as anyone who's lost everything. He looked down. The wine caught the light like blood. For a long while we didn't speak. Only the clinking of cutlery, the occasional exhale. I let the silence stretch. Long enough to make him squirm. Long enough for him to look up and meet my eyes. That's when I asked it. Do you ever think about her? He froze. His fork stopped midair. What? My daughter, I said, my voice level, almost kind. Do you ever think about her? His jaw tightened. Of course. Every day. She was a wonderful girl. Was, I repeated softly. Funny choice of word. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Just that guilty flicker again, darting behind his eyes like something trapped and terrified. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, studying him the way a surgeon studies a wound before cutting. You were close, weren't you? He blinked. We worked together, yeah. She was going through some things. I tried to help. Help? I almost laughed. That what you call it now? He looked at me then. Really looked. Searching for how much I knew. Trying to measure the danger in my calm. His lips parted, the faintest tremor shaking the words before they formed. What are you saying? I smiled. Nothing. The word hung there, heavy, unconvincing. Then I leaned back and reached for the bottle. Poured more wine into his glass, slow, steady. A trickle of crimson catching candlelight like liquid guilt. He didn't stop me. Didn't even blink. Just stared at the tablecloth, white except for a faint stain near the center. The same one from the night she called me. I let the record spin to silence. The room went still. Only the clock kept time, a metronome for confessions left unsaid. She was scared, you know, I said quietly. Before she died, he swallowed hard. I found her voicemail, I interrupted, voice barely above a whisper. The one she left me. You can hear it in her tone. That tremor. The kind of fear you don't fake. He stared at me like I'd struck him. Maybe I had. She mentioned someone, I continued, softer now, almost wistful. Didn't say your name. Didn't have to. He pushed his chair back, the scrape of it against the floor breaking the silence like glass. I should go, he muttered. I nodded. Of course. Long drive ahead, but I didn't stand. I just watched. Watched as he grabbed his coat with shaking hands. Watched the sweat gather near his temple. Watched him struggle to breathe through the weight of everything left unspoken. At the door he hesitated. Turned back, eyes searching mine for mercy that wasn't there. I didn't mean for any of it to happen, he said. You have to believe that. I tilted my head. Oh, I believe it. He looked almost relieved, until I added, That's what makes it worse. He left without another word. The door clicked shut. The clock ticked on. The wine glass sat where he'd left it, half full, fingerprints smudged around the rim. I reached for it, tracing one with my thumb. The print was small, fragile, just like hers. Outside, rain began to fall. Not gentle this time, harsh, insistent, like the sky wanted to wash something away. I lifted my glass and stared at the reflection trembling inside it. The candle, the stain, the empty chair across from me. I didn't need to hurt him, I said, softly to no one. I just needed him to remember. The glass touched my lips, but I didn't drink, because vengeance isn't a feast. It's fasting. It's knowing the hunger will never end, and choosing to live with it anyway. And in that silence, that small, holy quiet, I could almost hear her laugh again. The echo of it soft, fleeting, gone before I could catch it. That's when I whispered, almost to her ghost, I made him remember you, baby. That's all I wanted. Her voice still lingers in the walls. Even now, when the house settles after midnight, when the air tightens in my chest and the silence becomes unbearable, I hear her. Not as memory, as residue, the kind of echo that clings. That night I dreamed of her again. Not the version before, not the woman who laughed in sunlight, but the ghost who spoke in half phrases. Her voice was soft, cracked glass. She said my name like it hurt. When I woke, the air still carried her scent, lavender and ash. I sat there, on the edge of the bed we once shared, staring at the space where her pillow should have been. Sometimes I think she's still there, trapped between breath and regret. Sometimes I think she never really left. The day she returned, or rather the day I let her return, the sky hung low, swollen with unshed rain. She walked through the doorway like someone stepping back into a memory she didn't trust. Her eyes darted around the room, scanning every surface for traces of what used to be. She looked thinner, fragile, like truth had been eating her alive. We spoke carefully that night, her and I, like strangers forced to share oxygen. Every word measured, every silence sharp enough to bleed through. Do you hate me? She asked once. I wanted to say yes. God, I wanted to. But the word stuck in my throat like a shard. Instead, I just said no, a lie. But a necessary one. She smiled then, faint, broken, and looked down at her hands. The same hands that once tucked our daughter's hair behind her ear. The same hands that wrote the goodbye note I found too late. I don't remember everything, she said. It's all fog. Maybe that was true. Or maybe she wanted to believe that forgetting was forgiveness. But I'd seen her eyes flicker every time I said his name. Every time I mentioned Ethan. That small tremor. That half second of panic. It told me more than words ever could. She remembered. And she was terrified. I should have ended it there. Let her live in her fog. Let the past rot quietly. But something in me wanted her to face it. To face him, so I brought him closer. A second invitation. A dinner like before. Same table. Same candles. Same wine, the one she loved. I told her it was time to make peace. She smiled, brittle, obedient. Like someone walking barefoot toward fire. When Ethan arrived, he hesitated at the threshold. His eyes flickered from me to her. Confusion, guilt, relief, all tangled. I could almost hear the blood rush in his veins. Didn't expect to see you, he said softly to her. She looked up. Neither did I. And there it was in that tension, invisible but choking. The air thick with unsaid things. The smell of cooked lamb, of aged oak, of something rotting beneath civility. We sat, talked, laughed even. But the laughter was false, hollow. The kind that hides tremors. Every word was choreography. Every glance a knife hidden in politeness. When I raised my glass, my hands didn't shake. To truth, I said. They hesitated. I smiled. To love that survives its own destruction. And for a heartbeat, no one moved. No one breathed. The silence that followed was exquisite. Her eyes met mine across the table. Something in her gaze begged for mercy. Or maybe forgiveness. I gave her neither. Ethan looked from one of us to the other, realizing, perhaps too late, that this was no reconciliation. It was a reckoning. I remember the sound of the clock ticking. The flicker of the candle flame against her wedding ring. The faint tremor in Ethan's hand as he lifted his glass to meet mine. Cheers, he said, voice low. Our glasses touched, a sound so small, yet so final it might as well have been a closing door. That's when I felt it, not rage, not sorrow. Something colder. A calm that terrified me because in that moment, I knew. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about control, and I had it. Every breath, every word, every trembling gesture in that room, all of it belonged to me. The night stretched thin, like it was waiting for something to break. The three of us sat beneath the dim chandelier, its light swaying, fractured through crystal edges, spilling uneven shadows across our faces. Ethan kept glancing at her, and every time he did, her shoulders tensed, like she was bracing for a memory she didn't want. I watched them, pretending to sip my wine. I didn't taste it. I only watched. She reached for her glass, but her hand shook. Just slightly, enough for the rim to clink against the bottle. Her eyes flicked toward me, searching, maybe for comfort, maybe for permission. I gave neither. You've done well for yourself, Ethan said finally, his voice soft but slippery. This house, it looks different. Everything changes when you lose a child, I said. Even the walls start listening. He froze mid-sip. My wife's eyes darted down to her plate. The sound of silver scraping porcelain filled the silence like static. That's when I saw it. The small scar just under her collarbone, half hidden by her dress. I hadn't noticed it before. My throat tightened. It wasn't old. Something inside me twisted. Grief, fury, disbelief all fused into one impossible pulse. She caught me looking and instinctively covered it with her hand. Ethan noticed too, and his eyes went glassy, guilty. I smiled. Old wound? Neither answered. The air thickened again. My chest felt tight, but my mind was razor sharp. Every tremor, every silence, every flicker of hesitation etched itself into me. I excused myself to the kitchen under the pretense of opening another bottle. The moment I stepped away, I let the mask drop. My hands gripped the counter, white-knuckled, trembling. I could still hear them whispering in the next room, faint, fractured. Why did you come? She said, I thought it was time, Ethan murmured. Time for what? She asked. He didn't answer, and I realized he wasn't here for forgiveness. He was here to see what I knew. When I returned, the air between them had shifted. She looked pale, like something inside her had broken open. Ethan's jaw was clenched, his eyes dark. Calculating now, I poured the wine slowly, deliberately. Let's not pretend anymore, I said. Finally breaking the tension, they both froze. Pretend what? Ethan asked, feigning confusion. I looked straight into his eyes, calm, unblinking. That she doesn't remember. That you didn't cross a line you swore you never would. Her breath hitched. Ethan set his glass down, the sound sharp and final. That's not, he started, but his voice cracked. She was 17, I said quietly. 17, Ethan. My wife closed her eyes, tears gathering but never falling. Please, she whispered. Don't. Why not? I said, my voice trembling now. You had no problem letting her drown in silence. Ethan stood up suddenly, the chair scraping the floor. You don't know what you're talking about. I rose too, slower, more controlled. I know exactly what I'm talking about. The air in that room was suffocating now. My pulse thundered, but my face stayed still. The old me, the man who once believed in decency and forgiveness, was gone. All that remained was this version. Cold, deliberate, steady. I invited you here because I wanted to look you in the eye, I said. To see if you'd admit it. But you won't, will you? You never do. He stared back, shaking his head, words failing him. She whispered again, barely audible. Please stop, both of you. But it was too late for mercy. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You didn't just take my daughter's trust. You took her peace, and then you let her die thinking she was to blame. Ethan's face drained of color. That's not she. She made choices. I slammed my fist onto the table, the plates rattling, the wine spilling in a red bloom across the linen. She was a child. The chandelier quivered. The house held its breath. He stood there, speechless, trembling. She cried silently. Not for him, not for me, but for the moment itself, for what couldn't be undone. And in that stillness, I saw the truth of it all. Revenge wasn't justice. It was just gravity, pulling everything that ever mattered into its dark center. Still, I leaned closer and whispered so only he could hear. Every night since she died, I've wished I could forget your face. But I can't, and now, neither will you. The words hung between us, heavy as smoke. Then I smiled. calm, almost kind. Eat before it gets cold, I sat back down. He did too. We ate in silence. The only sound was the faint, steady ticking of the clock. The clock kept ticking loud enough to count the seconds between us. Each one felt heavier than the last, a heartbeat I couldn't silence. Ethan ate in small, nervous bites, the fork trembling in his hand. My wife just stared at her plate, eyes unfocused, trapped somewhere far beyond that room. I watched them both, the ghosts of everything I'd lost sitting right across from me. Funny, isn't it, how grief and guilt can share the same table? He tried to break the silence again. I didn't mean for any of it to happen. I almost laughed. Didn't mean, the oldest excuse in the book. Men like him never mean it. They just mean to get away with it. You didn't mean to hurt her, I said, voice steady. But you did. He looked at me then, really looked. And for a moment I saw the fear flicker in his eyes. Not of me, but of himself, of the reflection I was holding up. Do you remember her voice? I asked quietly. The last time she called? He blinked. She was crying, I continued, my tone tightening, rising. She said your name. She said she was scared. My wife covered her mouth. A single tear fell. Ethan froze. His shoulders slumped. The glass in his hand tilted, spilling wine down his wrist onto the tablecloth. Another red stain among many. And that's when I knew. He remembered. There it was. That flicker of recognition, the shadow in his expression. It wasn't confusion. It was memory. I leaned forward, whispering, "She trusted you, more than she ever trusted me." He said nothing. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. Then I stood up. Slowly, calmly, collected. "I don't want your confession," I said. "You don't deserve to be clean again." I walked toward the cabinet by the window, opened it, pulled out a small wooden box. The same one the police had returned after the investigation, the one with her locket inside, the one she'd worn the night she died. I placed it on the table in front of him. "She wore this the night she left your apartment." He flinched, eyes widening. My wife looked at him in horror. "I thought it was lost," she whispered. "No," I said. "It wasn't." The air turned cold. Even the chandelier's light seemed to dim. "I kept it," I said softly, "because I wanted to remember what monsters look like when they smile." He pushed his chair back suddenly. "You're insane." "Maybe," I said, tilting my head. "But at least I remember why." He stood there, shaking, caught between flight and shame. My wife's tears were quiet now, steady, resigned. She whispered, "Please, just let him go." I looked at her, and for the first time in years I didn't see the woman I'd married. I saw someone who'd been living with secrets buried so deep she'd forgotten what light looked like. "I can't," I said, "because letting him go means letting her go again. And I already buried her once." The words cracked something open in me. The calm shattered. The grief poured out, raw, ugly, human. My chest burned, my hands shook, but my voice stayed cold. "You killed her," I said to Ethan. "Maybe not with your hands, but with your silence, with your lies." He stepped back, trembling. "You have no proof." "Proof," I said, smiling bitterly. "I have something better." I leaned close, my breath against his ear. "I have her voice." His face drained of color. "She left a message," I said, barely above a whisper. "You didn't know that, did you?" He stammered. What do you mean?" "She called me that night," I said, begging me to answer. I didn't, but she left a voicemail. The look in his eyes told me everything. Guilt doesn't need witnesses. It recognizes itself. I stepped back and looked at both of them, the betrayer and the enabler. The man who stole her innocence and the woman who pretended not to see. That was the moment I realized revenge wasn't an act. It was a revelation, the kind that leaves everyone naked in the light. I didn't need to destroy him. He was already rotting from the inside out. All I had to do was lift the veil. He turned toward the door, muttering something about leaving. I didn't stop him. I didn't have to. "Go," I said. "You'll see her face every time you close your eyes." He hesitated, then left, slamming the door behind him. The echo of it carried through the house like thunder. My wife sat there, motionless. Her tears had dried. Her eyes were hollow. "What have you done?" she whispered. "Nothing," I said, pouring the last of the wine. I just told the truth. I raised the glass, the same kind she used to drink from, and looked into the crimson swirl. To her, I said softly. To the things we pretend not to see until they kill us. And then I drank. The clock kept ticking. The house was silent again, but somewhere deep down, I swear I could still hear her, laughing, crying, whispering through the cracks of my mind. And in that silence, I finally understood closure isn't peace. It's the sound of the truth finally echoing back. No one spoke of that night afterward. They didn't have to. The silence said everything. The police called it an accident and a tragic mishap, they said. The papers softened it even more. A medical relapse. Clean words for a dirty truth. But I remember. Every tremor in her hand. The glass slipping. The way the candlelight caught the red in her wine like blood reflecting flame. I remember how her eyes, her beautiful tired eyes, found mine one last time before the light went out. And I remember not moving. Not rushing. Just watching. Because part of me already knew she'd been dying long before that night. Dying in inches, one secret at a time. Ethan vanished soon after. No trace, no apology, just disappeared like smoke into the wind. But his name still sits on my list, ink pressed deep, underlined twice. Not crossed out. Never crossed out. The world has a funny way of erasing the things that don't fit its story. People move on. They rebuild, repaint, rename the things that used to matter. But memory doesn't repaint. It stains. I sit in the same dining room sometimes, the one where it all ended. The smell of old wine still lingers in the wood. The chair she sat in remains untouched, a ghost in velvet. Some nights I pour 2 glasses, one for her memory, one for what's left of me. They say forgiveness brings peace. I say silence does. I've learned to live inside it. The silence. It's cleaner than guilt, quieter than grief. It doesn't ask questions I can't answer. It doesn't demand absolution. It just is the neighbor's whisper sometimes, and about how I've changed, how I've grown quiet, colder. They're not wrong, but they don't understand that grief isn't something you recover from. It's something you wear, like a second skin, like armor. Sometimes I replay her last message, the one I didn't answer, just to remember the sound of her voice before it broke. The static between her breaths, the way she said "Dad" like it still meant something. And sometimes I imagine what she'd say now if she could see me. Would she forgive me? Would she understand? Or would she hate me for the things I've done in her name? Maybe all of it, maybe none of it. There's a kind of clarity that comes after you lose everything. A coldness that feels like honesty. I used to think revenge was fire, bright, destructive. But it isn't, it's ice. It freezes everything it touches. You stop burning. You stop feeling, you just preserve. When I look in the mirror now, I hardly recognize the man staring back. There's no rage left. Just quiet. Just the weight of everything unsaid. Tonight, like so many nights before, I uncork the bottle she loved. A Bordeaux she used to save for celebrations. I pour 2 glasses, watch the red swirl like it's breathing. The first sip burns, the second numbs. I raise my glass to her photo on the mantel, the one where she's laughing. Caught mid-motion sunlight in her hair. When I raise my glass, I whisper, "It's not to the past. It's to the part of me that died with you." The clock ticks louder than it should. The house holds its breath. Somewhere outside, wind rattles the window, but inside it's all still. Because this is what peace looks like after the storm. Not healing. Not redemption, just survival. And sometimes that's enough. I set her glass down beside mine, untouched, and lean back in the silence. Her voice still echoes somewhere deep in the cracks of my mind. Soft, apologetic, unfinished. And in that quiet, something inside me whispers back, "I know." There's a rhythm to the nights now. A kind of ritual. I pour, I sit, I remember. Sometimes I even talk, to her, to the silence, to the ghosts I've made. It helps. Or maybe it just keeps me sane enough to pretend. Tonight, though, the air feels different. The storm that had been brooding all day finally breaks. Rain taps against the windows in slow, heavy patterns, like knuckles against a coffin lid. The scent of wet earth slips through the cracks, mixing with the faint perfume of dust and cork. And for the first time in years, I feel something close to fear. Not of what I've done, but of what comes after. Because vengeance, once it's finished feeding, leaves behind only hunger. Ethan's name still lingers on my desk. That folded list of debts written in my own hand. Every other name crossed out cleanly, except his. The ink's smudged now, bled by sweat, maybe tears. I tell myself I've been waiting, for the right time, the right moment. But maybe I've just been afraid. Afraid that once I cross that last line, I'll have nothing left to live for. You spend so long chasing ghosts, you forget how to stop running. I take another sip, and the warmth cuts through the cold for a second. It burns going down, punishment, penance, comfort all at once. The clock ticks steady, metronomic, almost mocking. Then the phone buzzes. Once. Twice. A message. Unknown number. 2 words. Still waiting. The glass stops halfway to my lips. I read it again. And again, could it be him? After all this time? Or someone else, someone who knows? The past has a way of clawing its way back through the cracks, no matter how deep you bury it. My pulse steadies, not quickens. That's how I know I'm too far gone for fear to matter. I reach for the lighter on the table, flick it once, watch the flame catch and tremble. The reflection dances in the half-empty glass, red and gold and black. You think you're safe, I murmur into the dark. You think time buries guilt. The flame flickers like it heard me, but time doesn't bury anything. It just teaches you to live with the bones under your bed. I set the lighter down and take a deep breath. My hands don't shake anymore. I've trained them not to. I've trained my heart too. Each beat measured, deliberate, calm, like the sound of a door slowly closing. I remember her face the night she died. The fear, yes, but also something else. Recognition. Like she finally saw the truth, the one I'd kept hidden for so long. She wasn't innocent. Neither was I. We were both architects of our own collapse, just building different wings of the same ruin. People love to call vengeance evil. Maybe it is. But so is betrayal. So is silence. So is pretending to forget. I finish my drink and the warmth fades, replaced by something sharper, cleaner. Clarity. I stand, walk to the window and pull the curtain back. The city glows below, blurred by rain. Lights bleeding into each other, alive but distant. Somewhere out there, Ethan is breathing, eating, sleeping like nothing ever happened. But I know better. He's waiting too. And waiting is its own kind of violence. There's a letter on the table, one I never sent. Addressed to her and my daughter. It starts 100 different ways, ends the same every time. I'm sorry, but you deserve the truth. I trace the edge of the paper with my thumb, and for a moment I swear I hear her laugh again. High, unbroken, innocent. From a life so far gone, it feels like a dream I borrowed from someone else. That sound used to anchor me. Now it haunts me. I whisper her name once softly like a prayer. Then I fold the letter in half and slide it into the drawer with the list. Both belong together. Guilt and purpose, memory and revenge. Father and ghost, I pour what's left of the wine. The rain drums harder now, like applause or accusation. I can't tell which. The room smells of smoke and history. When I raise my glass, I say again, voice lower this time. It's not to the past. It's to the part of me that died with you. I drink slow, eyes closed. And for a second, just a second, I feel her beside me. Not as she was in the end, but as she used to be. Small hands tugging at my sleeve, eyes wide and alive, asking if I'll be home soon. I told her always that was the last lie I ever told her. The glass empties. The clock ticks once more, and in the reflection of the darkened window, I see her silhouette fade into the rain. I let the silence swallow me whole. Maybe tomorrow, I'll find Ethan. Maybe I won't. Maybe revenge isn't about ending anything, but about keeping something alive. The wound, the memory, the reason. They say peace is letting go, but what if the only thing keeping you human is the pain? The bottle is empty now. The room still smells of her perfume, faint, impossible. I imagine her voice again, whispering the same words she said the night before she left. Promise me you'll stop. I can't. I never could. I lift the empty glass one last time, tilt it toward her chair and let the candle burn down to nothing. When the flame dies, it's not with a hiss, it's with a sigh, like something that's been waiting years to exhale. And in the darkness, I finally understand what silence really is. Not peace, not punishment, just the echo of a truth too heavy to speak aloud.